There's a crisis in white global supremacy. White global supremacy is in severe, severe crisis. In fact, we may be witnessing the decline and fall of white supremacy in the world. That's why, again, I mentioned other ethnic groups, because we get too caught up on what white folk are doing. We're going to look up one day and find that white folk ain't even in control of the world anymore. That's right. That's what we're dealing with, what? Asians.
That's right.
Yeah. The Asians have already called this the Asian century. They call it this what? Consciously. They know exactly where they are going and what they want to do. And don't get caught up in this idea because they ain't white, they're in your favor. Oh yeah, we like to get that up, We like to get on that kick. Non-white, The Japanese have already given you a taste of how they feel about you. The Japanese have the highest, probably the highest racial superiority complex of any group on this globe. Oh yeah, you just don't hear about that part. They have even Koreans over there they haven't assimilated yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Chinese as well.
That's right.
Very chauvinistic, very superiority-oriented ideas of who and what they're about. If you think you're going to get a better break under the Chinese, a better break under the Japanese, or these other people, you got another thought coming. You must understand the situation. The United States is in terrible trouble. You haven't even heard about the trouble yet. You're sitting here wishing Bush is going to do something to, what is that man's name? Clinton. You have to understand the American presidency isn't the power it used to be. Not at all. The American presidency cannot exhibit the kind of influence in the world that it used to exhibit. And you must recognize that even the United States' internal economy is to a good extent out of its control. Yes. Yes. You got to understand what's going on here. That many of the restructuring, that this country is in so much debt that it cannot even rebuild its infrastructure and its highways and the other things that it needs to be. That it lived during the whole of the 80s on the goodness of the Japanese. That this country was not financed by white Americans at all. No. One day we'll have to talk business here and talk about bonds. How is a government in debt? Anybody has an idea how a government goes in debt? What do we mean that a government is in debt? Huh? What is a bond? You hear it every day, stocks and bonds. We hear it every day, stocks and bonds. What is a bond? It's essentially a what? Loan. It's a loan. Corporations raise money through bonds. They sell stock. That's one way of raising it. And if they go poop, you're through with it, right? You're on stock, it's over. They also raise money through bonds. When you buy a bond, you are lending money to a corporation or to a government. And so government finances itself through selling bonds. And its bonds are rated just the way your credit is rated. And these bonds are bought by banks just the way banks lend you money. Insurance companies and individuals if they have enough money. And they are bought by other governments. You see. So with the United States being overburdened, spending much more than it could afford, sold bonds, and the Japanese and the Taiwanese have what? Bought those bonds. This means that the United States government and the governmental system and economic system is in hock to the Asians already. You understand what I'm talking about? Am I clear? They've been such hock, and their money and wealth has flown out to such a degree until they even borrowing more money from foreign banks than domestic banks. They're in such hock that their industry is now going into partnerships with foreign companies. And in going in business with foreign companies, they are selling them their technology before they can even develop it within this country. They're selling them their knowledge and technique. They are shipping out their research and development facilities now. You understand what I'm talking about? Huh? That means the basic infrastructure, the economic infrastructure of the United States is being shipped out and sold, lock, stock, and barrel, to other people and to other nations. And that's the thing that Clinton is facing today. They've given away money to the middle class. See, they made you think they was giving it all to the poor. But actually, the people who make over $100,000 and $50,000 get more money out of the U.S. government than people who make under 10. Yeah, that's the reason why they have the problem. They call it entitlements, but you never hear them discuss what entitlements are, do you? You think when they say entitlements, they're referring to welfare people, right? No, it's the fact that they have given this money to middle classes and upper middle classes and permitted them to rob the government now. And now politically it's difficult for them to do what? Take it back. In fact, Clinton wants to give them what? More. But now he's recognized that the debt is so terrible that he may have to go back on that promise. That's terrible. That means there's a crisis here. Tremendous crisis. You think that you're going to get by just getting skills, you got another thought coming. I told you the other evening that within the Russian economy, you could pay a Russian physicist, top-flight physicist, $20 a month. The ruble's value is in such a relationship to the United States until you can hire a top-flight Russian physicist, a number one, for $20 a month of American money. There are engineers in India, Indonesia, and other places that are as well, if not better educated than American engineers. And therefore, many companies now are not only beginning to ship their manufacturings out to these countries, they're beginning to ship their research and developmental facilities out, which means even their creative ideas and other things will be generated in other nations. Do you understand what I'm telling you? There are people in Ireland today processing data for Reader's Digest out here in Hightstown, New Jersey, wherever. Yes, sitting at computer terminals, handling all the subscriptions and everything, and taking that information from Ireland directly into the main computer there. They don't have to hire input people here at all. And they're doing it for for a third of what they pay. There are people with MBAs over there being paid half of what an MBA is paid to process information. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to know what the hell is going on in this world. Do you understand? And understand the situation and the circumstances we face as a people. And you can see then why they're in the jail and why what's going to go on. You haven't seen the worst of it yet. You haven't begun to see the worst of it yet. This is why you got to transform your education. You just can't say, get an education, get a skill. So what skill? Do you know often, too, as things become even more automated and so forth, you don't need those skills. Because the friendlier the computer becomes, the less skill you need in programming it, don't you? Yeah. So anybody can work it. And if anybody can work it, why not take it to Mexico? Why not take it to Indonesia? Why not take it over here? So they work the whole thing, man. We'll talk about it another day. We'll talk about how these ghettos have been created deliberately by the economic system here and what's going on here. You got to understand this, though. But the Japanese and the Asians are outstripping this country. And this country feels that if it is to compete, it must then move into the global market and operate in a global system, which means to a great extent denuding its own people. Denuding even what? White folk. Not only black folk, but white folk. They're telling you on one hand how they need all your skills and all your competence, and yet what did I tell you the other evening? GM is firing 74,000 people. IBM is getting rid of 20 or 30,000 people. Come on, what are you talking about? How are you going to tell me you need more skills and what's happening? You're getting rid of all your skilled people. Come on. There's something wrong here. There's a hoax being played here. And then on the other hand, they'll tell you, and you hear it every day, that it is the small companies that are generating what? Employment in America. Not the large companies. The large companies are what? Shrinking and fading away. And that the future employment possibilities in America lies with the development of small businesses. That's the time now, you see. You don't got to build, steel companies, ladies and gentlemen, African men and gentlemen. You don't have to build now big IBMs and all these other stuff to compete now, because the weight lies with what? The smaller companies. Understand what I'm saying? And so in a sense, the crisis of this democracy, or whatever you want to call it, represents our what? Our opportunity. You see, the European system is in almost complete disarray. As a matter of fact, the economic system, if you understand and look at it closely, one of the things you find out is you can't understand it. Even the Europeans don't understand it. Oh yes, it's dangerously out of control. Very dangerous, very precarious. If you read Economist magazine some months back, they had a long piece on they really don't know what's going on there. You understand? But you see the Russian Empire has collapsed. And collapsed in terms of what? Ethnicities, groups, and so forth. After 40 and 70 years of telling these people, oh, communism is godless, and it is raceless, and it is classless. And what's the first thing that happened when communism fell down? Race, class, and God started fighting. Okay? People started killing each other in terms of what? Race, God, and class. So after what? 70 years of communist propaganda and control of the Russian Empire, the old bugbear what? Ethnicity raised his head. And you want to sit around here and think a little belief in Christianity and a little belief in Islam is going to take racism out of the world. You got another thought coming. No way. It ain't over by a long shot. You know what I can't understand? God sat around here and made all of these different ethnic groups, and then we make it holy to ignore it all. You know, really. You know, to me it's a type of blasphemy, you know. You made all these colors, but let's forget about all of this. Identity is based on some degree of what? Similarity. Individual interests are protected by social organization. And on some level, some group, even if they're within the same ethnic group, find some basis for similarity and some basis on which to organize as a group to protect their interests. But what they're trying to tell you is to lose any basis and foundation for connecting with anybody. But that's not the way the real world operates at all. Not at all. And now what do we have going over here? The European system is in disarray. East Germany is soaking up the wealth of West Germany. And so the Russian Empire is collapsing. And what do you see coming out of here? An intense increase in what? Racism in Europe. An increase of racism over the world, ladies and gentlemen, because as the pie shrinks, as the possibilities shrink, people will tend to move in terms of their ethnicity and operate based on their ethnicity. I told people years ago that integration in America could only work in an expanding economy. It's not moral, people holding hands. It's about what? An expanding economy. We got a lot of jobs, we'll let you have a few. We'll bring you up. We don't have any jobs, we're going to cut you out. I told you before, there's no book, ain't no law in the book, civil rights law in the book or in the Constitution is going to make a white man feed your child before he feeds his own. I don't care how many books you got or laws you got or whatever you got. In the end, they're not going to feed your children before they feed their own. Only sick Negroes feed other people's children before they feed their own. Yeah, this is the thing. And so as this shrinks, other groups are going to get a part of this pie. And you're going to have to face the fact then that as you lose these jobs out of industries, and this is a lot of why the violence is going on, Detroit being completely de-industrialized almost, you see. And as these opportunities shrink, what other groups do is bump down. You see, they bump other groups out and begin to do what? Take their place to maintain their survival. You see, the days during which the men and women in Detroit could go to Ford and make a lot of money, go to GM and make a lot of money, go to the steel mills and all those things. Money. In a sense, it didn't matter to them if those other people owned the little shops and the little stores and the little this, the little that. They were doing quite well. So what? I'm making big money. I'm living well. But now what happens now that those things have what? Disappeared. Something has got to move. Either you're going to say, well, I'll just be nice and kind and die and starve out here or rob and kill, or what? I've got to what? Get control of the assets, what? That I have what? Left. You see? And you have to tell the others, no personal feelings. I have everything against you, but I got to feed my children. I got to clothe my children. I got to take care of them. But you don't have anything against that, do you? That's what you told me you were doing in the neighborhood, right? That you were only taking care of your kids, right? What does this mean then in the long run, ladies and gentlemen? That we as African people, given the deep restructuring that is going on in the world, are going to have to find another economic way out. We are going to have to create jobs. We're going to have to create an economic system. We're going to have to employ ourselves and create means of taking care of our people. That means then that we are going to first have to capture our economic infrastructure from other groups. Number one, because you must accumulate capital. And you must withdraw as much as possible of your capital from others in order to use it for yourself. And this goes on with groups all the time. Reagan did it. Why do you think the poor got poorer and the rich got richer? They ran a game called supply side economics, which meant that if you give the people who have money more money, they will take the money and invest it and build factories and hire the people who don't. But we were put in a trick. That's the supply side, you see. In other words, give it to people who got it, and they will invest it and create more. But it didn't work out that way, did it? So the laws were changed, and the system was restructured. This is what you call cutting. When jobs are cut, or when programs are cut, this isn't just a cutting. This means money is being what? Transferred. It is being moved from one group, or one set, into the hands of other set. So this is what you call capital accumulation. The money that was once going to the poor and so forth now is redistributed to the wealthy. Now the wealthy in their gracious manner were supposed to invest it and create jobs, but that wasn't what happened. They played shell games with each other and created paper wealth and so forth, and then sold the companies off and shipped the stuff out and became international citizens and left us in the lurch. Even the whites are in the lurch. Everybody's in the lurch here, see? Now the black community then must accumulate capital so that it can invest in its own infrastructure, which means then it must redistribute its money and its wealth. It must take the money back and reduce the flow of money outward to other groups, accumulate it in itself, and invest it in itself so that it can create abundance for itself. The black community now must not lament being in the diaspora, but really see the diaspora as your most powerful economic instrument. You see, while we complain about global white supremacy and we complain about white imperialism, you must also recognize that white imperialism was in effect too a white diaspora. Am I getting through? In other words, it also spread white folk where? Around the world. It wasn't just a colonizing of African people. You had colonizers. And the colonizers came to what? Live in all major areas and cities and places around the world. Using their ethnicity, they created lines of what? Communications all around the world. They built what? Commercial what? Networks all around the world, huh? They traded with each other, what? All around the world. You understand what I'm saying? So they scattered around the world, but in maintaining their ethnic identity and interests, they were able to create a global economic, political, and military system. Am I getting through to you? I know I'm keeping you a little late, but I just want to talk to you a little bit. Now then, and this is happening to the Japanese, and this is happening to Koreans and others. As they move into a global market, they disperse what? Globally. And they maintain, and they have their what? Center cities, central banking areas, and all of these means by which they maintain a global system, you see. Now, African Americans, you have great possibilities here, you see. We are spread from one end of America to the other. We're in all of its major cities. We already have national networks set up right now in the names of churches and organizations, and again, looking at the Nation of Islam and other groups. And so you have already national what? Administrative networks. But you see, when you think of, until you think of nation, you can't use them, see? But when you begin to recognize, you should look then at the possibility of developing trade networks across this country, of developing and setting up a distribution system across this country. We should make all of these supermarkets and others make room on their shelves for black manufactured products. Because now once you got a distribution network set up, and you have markets all across the country, you have a basis for manufacturing, you see, and distribution in the country. If you organize these things now, you can deal with the Caribbean as an African American nation, you see, and you can deal with the African continent as an African American nation. With your accumulated wealth and power and economic organization, you can now begin to have a major impact on U.S. foreign policy and transform that policy in a way that it stimulates the economic development of African nations. You can make African nations now receive favored nation treatment. You see, lower tariffs against African manufactured products. Create a market for the sale of African manufactured products within this country, you see. See, people will tell you that it's because the Japanese were so industrious, or because they had such great family values, or because they were Confucians, and all of this is the reason why now they're an economic power in the world. Well, if that's the case, why weren't they an economic power 2,000 years ago? It takes more than that. Why did they only become an economic power basically after World War II? Because of the nature of what? The relationship that this country what? Had with them.